Now that we know how to find prepositional phrases, we're going to move on to what are the jobs the prepositional phrases are doing in sentences. So students got a new grammar bits today, number 5, and we started talking about first what are the jobs that they can do. Well, they can either do the job of an adjective or an adverb. So in order to understand that, we have to know, well, what does an adjective do in a sentence? An adjective modifies a noun or a pronoun, and an adverb modifies a verb, adverb, or another adjective. So for example, we talked about a noun, cat. What's an adjective to describe the cat? A fat cat. Fat is an adjective, it modifies a noun. Well, now when we talk about adjectives used as prepositional phrases, they're going to come after the noun they modify. So the fat cat with brown fur. So we're still describing the cat with a prepositional phrase, but this time our prepositional phrase comes after the word that it modifies. So then we tried looking at an example with a verb. So we said ran. And we might say, where might you run? Ran under the bridge. Okay, under the bridge is a prepositional phrase. It modifies the word ran. Ran is a verb, and adverbs are allowed to modify verbs. So, we looked at a couple sentences for examples. The spider is a type of jumping spider. Of jumping spider is a prepositional phrase. It starts with a preposition, it ends with a noun, and it has modifiers in the middle. So then we had to figure out what word is it modifying in a sentence. Usually, if it's an adjective, it's going to come after the noun it modifies. But I also talked about another trick that you could do. If you read the prepositional phrase with every word in the sentence, you should be able to hear how they fit together. So we said this of jumping spider, spider of jumping spider, is of jumping spider, a of jumping spider, or type of jumping spider. And type of jumping spider sounds like they fit together. So of jumping spider is a prepositional phrase. It's describing the word type. So then we had to figure out what part of speech is type. I always say start with a noun, because if it's a noun, you can put the in front of it. The type. So since that is a noun, we know that our prepositional phrase is an adjective, because adjectives are allowed to modify nouns. In our second sentence, jumping spiders live in many places. In many places is a prepositional phrase. In is the preposition, places is a noun, the places, with a modifier in between. So then we had to figure out what it modified. Jumping in many places, spiders in many places, or live in many places. Now it does sound like jumping in many places makes sense, but if we look at the context of the sentence, it's not talking about the spiders jumping in many places, it's talking about them living in many places. So our prepositional phrase modifies the word live, and now we had to figure out what part of speech is live. We can't put the in front of it, the live, but we can say live is something that you do. So that's a verb. If it's an action, it's a verb. And adverbs are allowed to modify verbs. So our prepositional phrase is modifying live. We can also use these questions that we talked about at the beginning of the year. Live where? Live in many places. I think it's a little bit harder in looking at adjectives to use those questions because sometimes it doesn't sound like it makes sense to me. Like, is a type, what kind of type? A type of jumping spider. So that's just another way to try that. We also talked about putting prepositional phrases as close as possible to the word that they're modifying. With 8 hairy legs, comma, the bird chased the spider. The way that this is written, with 8 hairy legs, is closer to the word bird, and it makes it sound like the bird has 8 hairy legs, which doesn't make sense. So we rewrote this with 8 hairy legs. The spider was chased by the bird. Or you could say the bird chased the spider with 8 hairy legs. Or the spider with 8 hairy legs was chased by the bird. And we pointed out that in all 3 of these sentences, only the first one needed a comma because it had an introductory phrase. If your prepositional phrase is at the end, it's not introducing the sentence, it does not need a comma. So then we practice some. Nearly 36,000 known kinds of spiders inhabit the earth. The preposition is of. Of what? Look for my noun. Of spiders. Then I had to figure out what it's modifying. Nearly of spiders, 36,000 of spiders, known of spiders, kinds of spiders. That makes sense to me. And it's right after the word it's modifying. So I know that spiders is modifying kinds. Now I have to figure out, is my phrase an adjective or an adverb? So to do that, I have to know what's the part of speech of kinds. So we start with, is it a noun? The kinds. It is a noun. You can put the in front of it. And so if I look up at my chart, what modifies a noun? An adjective. So, of spiders is an adjective prepositional phrase. Number 2, very few spiders are dangerous to people. Now I need to figure out what it's modifying. Very to people, few to people, spiders to people, are to people, or dangerous to people. And again, it's usually going to be the one that it's closest to. Dangerous to people. So I know to people is modifying dangerous. Now I have to know, is this an adjective or an adverb? So I have to figure out what part of speech is dangerous. I can put the in front of it, the dangerous. That doesn't make sense. So dangerous is not a noun. I could think, is it a verb? Can you dangerous? That's not an action. So then I want to think, is it an adjective? Is it something that describes? Dangerous does describe, so dangerous is an adjective. So if I look up at my list, what is allowed to modify an adjective? Adverbs are allowed to modify adjectives. So this prepositional phrase is being used as an adverb. Number 3, spiders eat millions of disease-bearing mosquitoes. Of is the preposition. Of what? Of disease-bearing mosquitoes. What's it describing? Spiders of disease-bearing mosquitoes, eat of disease-bearing mosquitoes, or millions of disease-bearing mosquitoes? Millions. Is millions a noun? The millions. Yep, that's a noun. So that means my prepositional phrase is an adjective because adjectives are allowed to modify nouns. And then the last example we're going to do. They also control huge populations of garden pests. Of is a preposition. Of what? Of garden pests. They of garden pests, also of garden pests, control of garden pests, huge of garden pests, or populations of garden pests. So it's modifying populations. The populations is a noun, so my prepositional phrase is being used as an adjective. So these are some little tricks to use, hints to help you in identifying this. And this is exactly what your homework is going to look like for Tuesday night on page 607 in your grammar book.